trying to stream. Can anybody hear us out there? First of all, if you are still watching, I love you with all of my heart. Okay, if you're actually still watching this show, clearly we're having an issue here. If you can hear Michael, somebody pop up and let us know if you can hear Mike still. Yeah, we've narrowed it down. It's OBS or an ancient curse placed upon us by beings forgotten before time for gosh only knows what. I mean, are we just out? Are we just? I don't know what to do. Yeah, Bruce is asleep. Yeah. Gosh almighty, I've never had this happen before. I don't know, guys. Wow, well, what a hassle. Um, maybe there is. Yeah, dude. All right. Gosh, I just do not know. Yeah, I was that was a that was a miss. And now the cat's out of the bag. All right. I, you know what? In my movie, it would be the knob on your fake TV. Like somehow the setting had gotten knocked on that somehow. So, um, man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man, what the hell is going on? Why isn't this working? It's got to be one stupid thing that I've never messed with before. All right, I'm going to try again. Mike, properties. OBS. OBS, you're the hassle death in me. So, this is obnoxious. All right. Oh, man. All right. It can't be that. It's got to be here. OBS preferences. Dude, everybody wants to hear from you, and I just can't make it happen. So how are you guys up there watching? Hey, so now you can't see me as I'm working, and you can talk to and you can see Mike, but you can't hear him. This is one of those like push me, pull you kind of a situations here. So cool. Yes. Hello, I am Michael Curtis. Wow. I I'm really enjoying myself here. This isn't embarrassing at all. What a fun time we're all having here dealing with this nonsense. My goodness gracious. All right, that's the recording thing. That's the encoder. All right, audio. It, no. All right, try it now. Anybody hear anything? Test, test, test. Anybody? 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 All right, try now. Man, oh man, what is going on? Ugh. Oh my gosh. All right. You know what? I'm gonna turn off my headphones in case that's the problem. I can't imagine it would be, but I'm out of ideas.
Hear me. There you go. There you go. Okay, can you people in Twitch land, can you hear us now?
What? Yes. Well, somebody can hear you, but I don't know. Can they hear me?
Can you hear Mike? Can anybody hear Mike?
Yep. You can hear me.
That worked?
Yes, they can hear me. It was your headphones were causing the issue.
Don't I use them every time?
Okay, but can you hear me?
I hear you fine. Ah!
Well, thank you everybody for joining us for another episode of Keep Crawlin.
Woo, right. Boy.
Okay. All right, then. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right. So where were we? Where were we, Brendan?
Well, you know what?
We're at the top of the show.
We're at the top of the show. Hey, I'm Brendan LaSalle, and we're really glad to hear from y'all. You know what? We're at the point now, and I've lost my show notes. Oh my god. Let's talk about, the cat's already out of the bag. Let us talk treasure type you, people watching from home.
Let's pretend we had a few moments of interesting chat with one another. We got caught up on what we were doing with games and everything that you just witnessed. And it was actually an extravagant lead up to the topic that we were going to be talking about this evening after we talk about treasure type you. And the topic is how the sausage gets made. And there you go. That you saw how the sausage gets made. Which apparently, so.
It's Okay, so you ready to do this treasure type you? Okay.
Where did the treasure type you?
Bum, 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 bum. Okay, so this entry comes from Hector the Missile Cruise. No, I can't see my stupid show notes. Come on, you. And Hector says, so this is obviously, this is the ship from Space Battleship Yamamoto, aka Star Blazers. Hector sent this in, and Hector says, when I was a kid, he says, I would catch the, when I was a kid, before I would catch the bus to school, me and my dad would watch Star Blazers, aka Battleship Yamamoto. This is the first anime I had ever seen, and the first serious cartoon space opera I fell in love with. We probably watched the entire thing at least 4 or 5 times. Back in 1998, when the internet was still relatively new, I stumbled upon a Japanese site that sold a die-cast Yamato. I couldn't believe it. I've wanted one of these ever since I saw the show way back when. I think it took about a month or 2 for it to get to me, but I waited 20 years at this point, so I wasn't complaining. This is one of my highly prized possessions in my geek collection, and I'm glad I still have it around. Does anyone out there remember the Star Blazers song? I bet the hardcore fans do. We're off to outer space protecting Mother Earth to save the human race. Our Star Blazers. So that is it. That is what Hector sent us this round, and we do remember that. We're huge fans, and thank you, Hector. That was awesome.
That was I was impressed. I remember the show, but I do not remember the theme song. And just for the heads up, there's a suspicion in the chat that they might be hearing me through your speakers and each of your microphone. But at this point, we're going to take anything. So
we'll take it.
Right? So
muscle tough. Hey.
But yeah, no, I remember Star Blazers. I remember that dimly when probably the time that Hector was talking about. I just remember the big battle. Like it was one of those things that, like later in college, having discussions like, was there like a cartoon when we were kids about like a space battleship that like shot plasma out of the front of it or something like that? And that was one of those, about 6 beers into the night, I was like, yeah, I think I kind of remember that. I did not know it was actually known as Battleship Yamamoto though until much later.
Oh yeah, I did know that, and there is a live action version that was produced in Japan in like I want to say the late '90s. I have never been able to see with all of my Google Foo.
I have seen it. In fact, actually, my local library had a copy of it, and I was going through the shelves one day. I'm like, Battleship Yamamoto, the live action version of it.
How was it?
And you know what? I cannot say. I am not properly prepared to judge the movie because I don't remember. I remember almost nothing about the cartoon except there was a big flying battleship in space. Yeah. So I can't say if it was faithful to the cartoon, and I'm assuming it was probably a manga at some point or something.
I think so.
Most of the anime stuff began as a manga or something. So I'm not in the position where I can judge that, but I remember it being, if like the Godzilla movies that were done in the '90s, they did like a whole string of them with bigger budgets and everything. It was probably like that quality production and everything. Yeah. But I mean, if you're a fan of Star Blazers or Battleship Yamamoto, I'm sure it's worth tracking down.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, there were the two animes of that era that were fighting for my soul were, of course, Space Battleship Yamamoto, but also Star Blazers, aka Science Ninja Gatchaman. And I fell down. I was heavy into Science Ninja Gatchaman, which when I was a kid, it was Star Blazers, and it was so good. But I remember.
I must interject, my fine friend here. Wasn't Gatchaman Battle of the Planets and Battleship Yamamoto Star Blazers?
Yeah, did I get the names confused?
Yes, you were saying. Yeah,
yeah. Gatchaman was definitely was Battle of the Planets, and that was the one that I was really, really into big time. But I watched that. I watched that obsessively, and then when I was I don't know, I guess in my when they first started having Netflix, where they were actually mailing you the discs. First thing I did, one of the first things I did was find the old find the Japanese version of Gatchaman that I had heard about for a long time, and wow, so much cooler, so many more people got killed. A lot of fun. It was amazing how they completely, What's New Tiger Lily style completely changed all of the dialogue for the American version, and they added this little R2D2 looking robot that would be like the segment host.
As the Mild Manner Gamer has reminded us, 7 Sark 7.
7 Sark 7. Thanks, Mild. Yeah, bro.
As Hectorphonic, I'm assuming that is probably our good friend Hector Cruz reminded us it wasn't the plasma cannon, it was the wave motion gun.
Oh, wow.
From the front of that. So,
thanks, Hector. We would have. You're the man, Hector, and thank you. Seriously, thank you for sending that. And we would love. I want to see all of your great geek stuff. Please email that to us at the show, which is currently the only email address they'll let us have. Brendan@goodman-games.com. I'm just glad we got invited.
Apparently, we cannot be trusted with technology, so we have to use Brendan's email address in order to get anything going in about this show. So.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yes. So, yeah, definitely we'd love to see more of what you have. Obviously, Hector showed his Battleship Yamamoto. If you've got other cool stuff hanging around and you're a gamer, so I'm sure you do, we would love to see them. Right?
Absolutely.
Don't make us bring out our own stuff because, after a while it just gets sad.
Yeah. You're like, wow, he surely does have a whole lot of, a whole lot of copies of the old Dungeon Master Guide. Yes, I do. But there you go. So that's all right, though. So, but that was fantastic, and we're grateful for all of that. And I think that speaking of transitions, I think it's time to get to our main topic for the evening: how the sausage gets made. If you're interested in game design, we're here to talk about it tonight.
Well, we are going to talk a little bit about game design, but more importantly, what we're going to talk about is the actual process of as I kind of teased on Facebook, is that it's not as catchy as I'm Only a Bill on Schoolhouse Rock, but we're going to talk a little bit about how your favorite adventure goes from inspiration to actually arriving in your hands from the local game store or in a package from the warehouse Getty. So we were just basically, I didn't really know about the whole process of what is required to actually produce an adventure until I obviously got involved in the industry. And I know some of our listeners are interested in pursuing a career of some sorts in the industry. So we're going to talk about that. You said, no, don't do that. We'll talk a little bit about how that kind of goes on. So Brendan, you and I, we actually at the very start of the adventure creating phase, we actually go about things a little differently.
Yes.
So I think we should kind of start there. So when you have an adventure, Brendan, how does it begin with you?
So with me, it almost always begins with running them at the table. I have an idea or an inspiration, and I'll have a very basic idea of what I want to do, and I will very often just with stats for monsters and some very other basic stuff, I will go ahead and run it almost like an improv the first couple of times. I'll sort of like run an adventure at least twice or three times, sort of like changing it every time until I get to like what I call the softball stage, where I can go, okay, this is something I can work with now. I sort of have an idea of, what will be fun, how to fill in all of the time, and what kind of encounters I want to have, and what I want the rewards to be. So after I've run it a couple of times as almost an improv, that is when I will actually set it to a notebook, write it down, and then sort of run it, and every time make changes. Every time I do it, I'll go ahead and try to do it a little bit differently every time. So I try to run things at least before I even start. Like I'll make a lot of notes in a notebook, but I don't start typing until I've run something at least these days 10 or 11 times if I can work it out. So that's the very intro. It's a very different process for you, as I understand.
It is, yes. And Jess has commented, Jess McDevitt has commented that right now she's currently going through a stack of adventure modules that you and I have written in preparation for something she's working on. So thank you very much.
Cool. Is it a well-deserved dressing down? Because is that what you?
As long as the project is like what not to do, I mean. So, So when I set out to start an adventure, like once we get past the initial inspiration and everything, I actually like to put together what I call kind of like a proto first draft. I don't write it specifically necessarily as I would the final manuscript, but I do like to sit down and pretend that I am, because I find for me, by working through the adventure that way, stuff suggests itself that will, when I go run it, it actually, I build kind of like the backstory and like the adventure itself kind of by literally going through the adventure, as if I was adventuring through it. Everything is new, and I don't know what's kind of going to come around the next corner, besides what I might have in an outline. So when I'm sitting there and I'm hammering away on the keyboard, sometimes ideas will, like, I know I've had a really good writing day with, like, when I hit my word count, I look at it and I see stuff and I have no idea where that came from. Like that idea, like I did not sit down with that idea. I remember the first time that happened was like the Sea Queen escapes. I came up with these jellyfish suits that you put on for like underwater exploration and everything. And when I was done, I was like, wow. I was like, I don't think that's been used before, but I like that idea. Yeah. So once I have the proto draft, then I start running that at the convention, because now I have like all my notes and everything, and kind of like easy reference. So I'm not constantly flipping through a notebook paper. I can progress through the adventure as we're kind of progressing to it. So no wrong way, no right way. That's just, I like getting the words down.
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah, I get it. And I think
that's what I have to do at the end.
yeah, that's where and it's funny. One of my downfalls is that very often when it actually does come time to write it, I'll have new discoveries, but at this point, I don't have time to play test it anymore. At this point, I've told a man with a contract that I'm going to have it to him on a certain day, and it's like, So I definitely have had that experience of like actually when I sit down to write something, there being a real disconnect from like I'll have a new idea at the keyboard, but I maybe that happens a lot during other parts of the process as well for me. Like even in editing, we're in editing right now for X-Crawl Classics, and I keep coming across things. I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if I added blah blah blah? And that ship has sailed. I'm just not. I don't have time to playtest anything anymore before 0 hour. But I definitely think that in writing, like when I write fiction, I write longhand to start off with, and I make those discoveries while I'm writing. But
just like Edgar Allan Poe. Do an Edgar Allan Poe like this, man. and frankly, every other writer before the invention of the typewriter. So,
it works for me.
So okay. So although the kind of process of what we do is a little bit different, the very first thing that you wrote for Joe was that turned out like DCC number 10, right?
Yes, DCC number 10. Mm-hmm.
Now, was that an idea I'm assuming that was an idea that you pitched Joe at that point, because you were kind of coming in like the fanboy side of things?
I was such a fan. I discovered Bronchosaurus Rex when I was working at the Gamekeeper, and I was like, this guy gets me. The Civil War in space with dinosaurs, sign me up. So I had reached out to him. We had become friends. We had met each other on the circuit a couple of times, and I was really into his work, and I bought copies from him directly. And he, Panda Head had moved out of the gaming business, and I was looking for stuff to do, and had got the bug real bad. And I had only written X-Crawl stuff at that point for publication. So I reached out, and I was like, hey, what if I did the pitch was literally, how about a dungeon full of evil mutated plants? He was like, yes, run with that, So I kind of mocked it up. And then I did a play test for that. That was the worst play test I've ever done. Right here in this house where I'm back at right now. It was just, I remember thinking, do I even want to do this? But made some changes, ran it for some more folks, and that began as a pitch. I ran some ideas through, and then I sent him, when I was about 3,000 words in, I think I sent him like, hey, is this about what you want? And he gave me some formatting suggestions, and then I went back and sent him the whole manuscript, and we made changes, but that was it.
So you actually did the elevator pitch thing. That was
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. That's actually something that a lot of people getting started for the first time will just submit a manuscript blind. I'm sure like the slush pile at TSR back in the day was probably, you could actually put like underneath the slush pile of unsolicited manuscripts. But you did it the right way. It's like, when you're pitching an idea, put together basically like, I'm going to write this. Are you interested in this? And this way you're not wasting everybody's time. So,
yes.
Very good etiquette on you, sir. Very good.
Thank you.
But that's funny, is because again, we actually had a different entrance in the hobby in that way, because when I got my start, I had written what eventually became the Dungeon Alphabet, and I had done that on my blog at the time. And Joe came across that, and he sent me an email and said, would you be interested in developing this into like to a role-playing supplement? And I said, sure. And so that kind of started our relationship. But I had never written any adventures for him. I had done the Dungeon Alphabet, and I had read Stonehell was out at that time. And this was when DCC RPG was still in alpha, and I guess at that point, like Sailors on the Starless Sea was together. The Emerald Enchanter, like all those first 5 modules that came out when DCC came out were in various stages of completion, and Joe was looking for like the next one beyond that. So after like I proved that I could hit a deadline and everything, and I gave him some feedback on the DCC rules, Joe basically sent me an email at one point and said, I want you to write an adventure. I'm saying, okay. He's like, the title of the adventure is A Miracle is Framed. Like, go with that. That was so literally it wasn't like an idea I picked him. Joe basically said, here, I want you to write this idea. I want you to write this adventure around these this couple of words.
That's awesome.
So I said, okay. So I sat down and I wrote my very first DCC adventure for Joe, and did A Miracle Was Framed, and started playtesting that. Like in my very first convention, which I think we talked about, that I can't remember, but I think might have been an AutoCon. And that was my foot in the door, for the whole adventure writing process.
Fantastic.
And so that was, so you can, depending on, I guess, the relationship you have with the publisher, can go either way. Where you were coming as, you knew him but not professionally, and Joe and I already had a professional relationship. So
yeah. How did you like working backwards from the title?
It was pretty, actually. If it was like another title, it would have been more difficult. But I mean, right there, A Miracle Was Framed, 3 letters. The trampy piece. So I'm like, okay, so this is obviously what he's talking about. How do I turn this concept around? How do I make it into the fact that he is framed? So it was, it was pretty good. It was Joe, like, I guess in a couple of emails, Joe had like alluded to certain things that he wanted to do. I think Joe's still on it, but he's he's the big Bruce Lee fan. He was loving, like he really wanted to get that 1970s Bruce Lee vibe in and everything. So I managed to squeeze in. There's a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar reference from Game of Death in there, which I don't know. I don't know if nobody's ever come up and said hey, is that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? He's not, but yeah. So those are the ones playing along at home. But that was learning about the whole development thing and getting development notes. I'm sure that you've had your experience with those.
Oh, have I? Yes, I have. Although, I mean, in a way, like with X-Crawl, I got very few development notes with X-Crawl. Like, no one knows, like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's almost like I'm kind of like, hey, here's a genre I've written, and here's an adventure I've written for the genre I've written. Any questions? And they kind of let me do it, So I haven't had that, like in the early days, I didn't have a whole lot more. Really, the development process for me really came out of working with Joseph. And for me, the first big one for that was, I think it's number 33 DCC, what was it called? Belly of the Great Beast, where we had a lot more back and forth over that adventure than I had over anything. And I really enjoyed the process. And like, I embraced the collaborative side of it. There was a time when I didn't feel that way. I really felt like, I'm a one-man thing and I got to do it my way and all. But that's ignorant. You know what I mean? It's absolutely a collaboration, and it's stronger. Your work is stronger for collaborating. So I'm really grateful for that give and take.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I remember I would submit the first draft to the manuscript. And then all of a sudden not all of a sudden, but Joe would give the manuscript a look over, and then a day or a week later, my email would chime again, and the manuscript would return to me. And at the very top page of the manuscript, written there, all in yellow highlighted, was like Joe's development notes. So, piece by piece, like this page, all right, like this, and and just going through that, like, okay, I can see where he's going here, and he doesn't get this. I never a lot of pushback. Obviously was getting started at that point too, so you don't want to exactly say, no, I'm right. Damn you, you're stifling my creative vision.
No, fully. That would be the wrong way to handle that. Nobody likes working with a diva, and if you're, you'll know when you've gotten to that point. You'll know when you can do that, but even when you have gotten to the point where you can throw your weight around like that in this industry, you absolutely should not. I've seen it happen, and nobody wants to work with that guy. Nobody likes that guy, so don't be that guy.
No, not at all.
No.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm assuming, because eventually, I think that whole learning how to deal with development notes is very important. If you want to make it in this industry,
yeah. Not
just because it proves that you can take criticism, but also, at least in the case with Joe, he was literally teaching us like how to do our jobs.
Yes.
I mean, because it wasn't just always like plot or monsters or something like that. Sometimes it would just be literally things about how the industry works, and how, against kind of what we're talking about tonight, how the sausage gets made, exactly why there's such things as word counts. Like, well, I should be able to write as much as I want, right? If I write a big thing, and we can, be more, and we can charge more people for it, but that's not the way that the case is. Once you start breaking down and what it costs to print things, and where the various layers, where the various tiers are, and how much it costs to print a 16-page adventure, which is a 32-page adventure. So yeah.
How many you can fit in a case in a 12.5 inch by 15 inch by 10.5 inch case? How many copies? It all matters. So yeah, but
a little off the topic, but out there is that we have a question for you, Brandon. Tim White.
What's up, Tim?
He wants to know if you missed Pathfinder from converting X-Crawl. Oh, yeah. It's apparently Brendan's audio is having difficulty. So very.
And that's the way I did it.
So, that was fascinating. I'm sure everybody's very interested in that.
I'm playing. Honestly, there was a kind of a sometimes you would have these beautiful moments where you would come up with a really good way to like jimmy something that you wanted to do into the Pathfinder rules, as far as like how a monster should work or a character class should work. I miss those little wonderful revelatory moments where it's like, oh, I know, I can take this thing I got here and then tweak it, And I miss, me and Brett had some wonderful fights over. Brett Brooks from Panda Head was, of course, first editor when I was doing the the old stuff, and we had some wonderful arguments over feats and other bits of Pathfinder stuff. At one point, I wanted to. There was a feat, something like righteous attack that like paladins could get. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, well, I want my guy to have a righteous ass whooping feat. I want to make a feat and like he's gonna smack you so hard it changes your alignment. And of course, I was kind of playing around, but it led to this incredibly cool discussion about like the inner workings of that. Like, can you do that to a PC? Only to a monster? Does it work on a demon? Like it was really neat. So, I mean, I would say I miss the days and the people I worked with more than, and certainly my group of play testers that I had back then, way more than I miss the system. If that's fair to say.
Right. Well, I hope that answers your question, Tim, because we're not going to become the Pathfinder show. So, but there we go. So, but we were talking about development notes and the importance of that. And so the development notes we're getting from Mike to Brendan is, let's stop talking about Pathfinder and move on to something else here. But actually, my point is that if you pay attention to development notes, eventually you stop getting them.
Yeah.
So at least that's, it's like it's rare that I submit a manuscript and I see that familiar yellow highlighting at the top. So either I've learned how to do my job or Joe has stopped caring. But I don't think it's the second case.
No, you get better at it. You have these moments where you're like, what the heck does this mean? Passive voice. Click, 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 click. Oh, yeah, I do that a lot, don't I? Actually, that was Brett Brooks, another one. Brett Brooks completely broke me of the passive voice habit, and he basically it's so funny. He sent me a handwritten note on one thing. It was like, there is no active form of to be, and I was like, oh. And for a while, I had it written on a Post-it note that like lived on the top of my old monitor forever. But yeah, eventually, yeah, if you pay attention to them, you get better and better at those kind of things, and yeah, stop getting so many notes,
Right. Yeah. So, So again, it's just like so. All right. So at this point, we have written our manuscripts. We have submitted them into Joe or to the publisher, whoever you're dealing with. You've dealt with development. You have done your second draft, and it now goes into the able hands of editing.
Yep.
And I will tell you this, I will admit this, is that when I was young, when I was in high school, I had a very bad outlook about editors. Because being young and stupid, I thought an editor's job was to squash the creative voice of the writer. And I said, I had grown up hearing stories about writers constantly fighting with their editors, and I thought that was going to be the case. I am now older, and I'm much more wiser, and I can look upon those years and realize, man, I was a dumbass. Because as I will say that the DCC fans are the greatest fans in the world, and I cannot say enough good things about our editors either. Everybody's only human. I'm sure some wag will be like, well, then how come there's typos? Typos happen. I'm sorry, but you should see what Brendan and I turned in to begin with. I mean, this.
Unacceptable, yeah.
there's an old adage about certain things you can't polish, and but luckily our manuscript is not the case. So yes, so basically the manuscript goes into the hands of the stable of editors, whoever is kind of assigned to the project or just happens to be free that week, and then from what happens with editing? What is your experience the editing process of?
So eventually, you're going to get the editor's first pass, and they're going to send it back to you, and you are going to go through and look at those changes and make sure they're all good. You have a moment of, oh my God, how did I not catch that? Oh no, and, you're like, what was I thinking? You have a lot of that. Sometimes you have an argument with an editor, not even an argument. Sometimes it's like, all right, they want to do this, this, and this. There have been, I would say that all of the Goodman's editors in the DCC era have been fantastic. You know what I mean? But I've had some editors in the past where you're like, and I've had some that were like, wow, you really should have worked harder on this, you catch stuff later on, you're like, oh my God, that was terrible, Even just bad word choice and bad sentences. A good editor will at least say, hey, would you like to maybe spruce this sentence up a little bit or do something with this? And you might go, oh yeah, it is pretty bad, and fix it up. Usually, I've never had to go back and forth more than like 2 or 3 times between me and an editor at the absolute most. And then eventually you get to a point where you're like, this is it, pull the trigger. And that's when we go to layout. That's where the real magic happens. Art and layout, baby.
Oh, yeah. I have to say is that there have been a couple cases, like it's always the very start of like me working with a new editor. And it happened the very first time is that, I was dealing with an editor and we were going back and forth on something. And I was, I was like, oh my God, how OCD can we possibly be about this whole process of this? And I was up on my high horse and everything. And then like, I had the moment of clarity. It's like, well, yeah, we're actually, this person is being paid to be OCD. And, your hippie ass should be actually paying more attention to your freaking manuscript. Like, all right, yeah. Like somebody's going to rein me in. So, yeah. So, and as soon as like I got that through my big thick skull, I was like, okay. And like, and we've worked together fine ever since. In fact, when I hear this person is, I don't want to say any names because, I don't want to, I love my editors. Okay, I love all of you. I know, and I'm already busting on myself for being a jackass, so no need to, drag them down there. But yeah, but yeah, so okay, so yeah, editing, definitely we need them. We love them. Thank you very much for your hard work.
Yeah.
But you have made it now. The manuscript is, as we get our hands off, at this point we are free for a while.
Yeah. But you know what, though? We're missing one magical step that I love, which is art requests. And that is where...
That's actually, this is a good thing. Because I've had friends who, I've told them about the process, and they don't realize, they don't realize the whole request process. So why don't you explain to the viewers what that entails there, Brendan?
So not every publisher will do this with you, but the good publishers will reach out to you and say, hey, what do you think would make good pieces of art from the manuscript? And you send them a list, and you send them ideas, and this is such a thing. Like a friend of mine and I, at one point, really, another writer, sat down and really talked about teaching a class on how to deal with artists, we finally abandoned it because we realized no one would give us money for that. But there's a real art to it, and it's a relationship between you and any given artist and such. But essentially, you will give them a list. I would like to have this scene, this scene, this scene, this scene. Something from this, maybe something with this, maybe this image. And every artist is different. Some really appreciate a real, like close reading. Some do not. Some would. And there are some who the best thing you can do is just send them the manuscript and then just shut your hippie ass up and let them, make the magic happen. And that's wonderful, But like, there's nothing in the world like every once in a while this will happen. You'll be like, hey, I had an idea for a cartoon for one of the early ones. You know what I mean? Where a ref is getting stabbed accidentally by a guy, and just a little whimsical thing with a caption. And like, I drew such a terrible picture. I mean, like, it is my best work probably, and it wasn't even Ziggy, much less Dilbert. You know what I mean? It was the worst. And like, I took a picture of it or I scanned it, sent it to a guy, and then like, I get this thing back, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. Like, it's like, artists can take that and go, okay, I see what this idiot would like. Whoopah! probably take them all of an afternoon, but I was so excited about that, So that was very cool.
Yeah, I have. I have. When I have been taught at this point, when I submit my art notes, they are very sparse.
Yeah.
Like party fighting weird monster in this room. Maybe have this, and that's literally as far as it go. Like when I first started, it was just like, all right, so like the fighters should be in the front, and they should be like the wizard again. No, I don't do that anymore. No. I'm just like, just you're being paid to do what you do well. I'm being paid to do what I do well, and never the twain shall meet.
Yeah.
So,
No, exactly right.
I mean, my attitude is that if the artist wants more feedback on something, they have my email. So well, what do you mean by this? And actually, I think that I've literally given artists like my notes, and I will see like their sketch later on, and I will go back and change the manuscript because what they send me back as a development note is actually better than anything that I put down there. Like the way that they do a monster or like a situation, like wow, like that. Like I don't want the comic book, the comic book effect where back in the day where like you have the cover of the comic book and you open up and like none of that stuff on the cover is actually in here.
Yeah.
But it's definitely I am more than happy to change because it's easier for me to change my words than it is to will you completely resketch all this,
Oh yeah. So. Yeah, the that happened to me with my first Mutant Crawl Classics adventure on the Apocalypse arc, where that was like a miracle was framed for you. They reached out to me and they're like, hey, would you like to do one of these adventures? I'm like, I would love to. They're like, great. We want you to write a 5th level adventure. It's going to be called the Apocalypse arc. Here's the blurb and go for it. And I was like, and I really like working that way. I was like excited. And I did my thing. I ran it as I was very careful with the monsters and the artifacts in that one. I wrote all those up, ran it for some people, and had a good time. And then as I'm like just starting to put it down, like literally writing the intro, I get a picture and they sent me the cover art that is now the cover art. And I'm like, oh, this has to be in there. Like this is so cool. And I think it's Stefan. I think he was trying to make the actual arc, but I'm like, that's not big enough to be my arc, but it's just big enough to be a real nasty robot that will now defend my arc from whatever comes along. So that became Clementine, the robot guardian of the Apocalypse arc. And I went back and I rewrote all of that and had to do an emergency playtest with the same people who were very patient and like, let's just read this one encounter with my incredibly nasty 2-fisted laser blasted tread robot. You don't mind, do you? So very patient were my guys. But yeah, I love working backwards from art. When you have the opportunity, I would love to just go through a sketchbook and be like, oh, I want to write up this monster and that queen and this king and that knight, do it.
Right. Well, Brendan, I would like to point out at this point is that had we started on time, we should be wrapping up the show right about now. But I think that we should keep going for at least so people get the full hour.
Yep.
Obviously, we understand if you have places to be. At this point, there was a time period where I think Brendan and I both wish we had somewhere else to be. Luckily, we got things working again. So, so we're probably go to about 9:20, 9:30, depending on.
After that nonsense, they are literally going to have to get the guy with the hook to drag me up. No. So,
so I have two things to bring up. One of it, Tim White mentions he wanted to know from me if I had any input on the Rats of Ilthmar virtual tabletop art, and I actually did not at that point because we already had a lot of the art together for the adventure. And I think a lot of that was based on that, but then, they were basically dealing with stuff that was already there. I was also probably like neck deep in another project at that point. That's the problem is that when at Company Games, when you prove that you're competent, there is no lack of work for you. So there's often things going on that I'm my head down on something else, or like we didn't see Brendan for like a year, like 3 years while you were on X Crawl,
Yeah.
So.
So
anyway, you're talking about like converting the manuscript to the art. I had the experience of when I did Imprisoned in the God Skull was Joe talked to Errol Otis and said, Errol, I want you to do like a painting. It's like, do a cover for our next adventure. And he was like, okay. And Errol, being Errol, had this, this huge weird ass, monster kind of in this like coral thing, and there was like a bug with a crown on it, and Joe was like, Mike, here's your next adventure. It's like, okay, all right, this is cool. So I have to basically write an entire adventure around Errol's cover. And that was challenging, and it was cool in a lot of ways. I mean, I was very happy to be working. Like, I love Errol, I love Errol's stuff and everything. So it's always a pleasure to be working with him. Yeah. But it was just like there was a lot of like imposter syndrome. Like, okay, I have to make something which is worthy of Errol's vision here. Like, how do I get in the Errol Otis mindset? So I actually went through 4 drafts on that one before I finally got around something that I was like, okay, this is weird enough to be Errol and still be me and still be DC City. So.
Nice, cool. That's it.
So a lot of people don't realize that we actually, we poor writers do have some input in the art. The smart of us, we know when to let the professionals.
Just suggest, for most artists, just a suggestion is the way to go. Don't try to tell them which arm they should have the shield in or anything like that. Let them do their pros. They're good at it. Let them do their thing.
Which again, it's one of those things that, sometimes there is slight discrepancies between the art and the manuscript, and that's usually the case is that, okay, right, the interpretation of the artist was slightly different for the writer, and that could have been for a number of reasons. That could have just been something that was overlooked, or it might have been the cases, well, we got this art, and it was time for things to go to print, so there wasn't enough time to go in and fix nothing. So this is what you get, and we hope that nobody notices, until the dust is cleared and we're out of town in our little, snake oil wagon, and So all right, so everything's in layout and everything. We're getting ready to. We're done, right? We can sit back and collect our fat paycheck at this point, right?
Yes, fat paychecks. Yes, the fat paycheck comes then.
No, what I'm thinking is proofing.
Yeah. Oh, proofing the manuscript.
My favorite part of the entire adventure creating process.
Yeah. It's the most nerve-wracking part, that's for sure. When you actually get the PDF draft, I'm like, okay, take a look and see if there's anything wrong with it. And you go, yes, there are things wrong. But at this point, it's already in layout, it's already in art, and there's only so much you can do. So now, you can only make little fixes. But when you're at that point, okay, I can't read every stat block aloud. I mean aloud. Actually read the stat block aloud to yourself in a room. Read it. Read the words. Say them aloud. Make sure everything's in there. And you're not armor class blank or whatever it happens to be. Because the RPG audience loves mistakes. You'll get 100 emails. 100 people telling you, hey, did you notice that you forgot to put in the... And you're like, oh, yeah. And they're right. You did it wrong and you shouldn't. So, just... take that when there's a part of it, and let me ask if this has been your experience as well, Mike. Like, very often I will get that PDF thing and I will become entranced and be like just so in love with the like look, it's all happened here. It's like I made words, they made pictures, layout person laid things out, and I'll be like just get sucked into it as an artifact and be like, wow, look at this pictures. And sometimes I don't pay as much attention as I should.
All right. No, what happens to me is when I get that PDF, I take a deep sigh, and I begin reading through it, because this is what happens: is that I hate reading my own stuff after a significant period of time has passed.
Really?
Because when I'm in the groove and everything, I'm writing everything out. This could be anywhere from weeks to months down the line. I look at my stuff and I spend the entire process kicking myself. Like, why did you do that word choice? Why did you do this? You could have written this so much better. This is, I hate going back on my old work because I can't turn off that self-criticism. So here I am, and I'm sitting everything laid out, and because it is already in layout, and because you can't change anything, major, like you can fix typos or anything. But if I have this entire paragraph would have been so much better if I structured the sentence this way, or if I use this word choice here or something like that. I have nothing I can do. When I submit my kind of list of proofing, like, could we maybe change this? Would that screw everything up? And but I have to accept, if you wanted it to be better, Curtis, you should have written it better in the first place. But that's what I'm hoping, is that by going back and going through this whole process of hating what I've written in the past, I'm becoming a better writer.
Yeah.
Because I think we should, as writers, no matter what you're writing, you should constantly be growing, trying to improve on your stuff. Yeah. So you should never be satisfied with your old material.
No.
I mean, you can be happy with it, but you should never. You can be like, okay, if I had to do that again, I would have done this in another way. Yeah,
I'm a big advocate of practice. I lived with an artist for a while, and I used to watch how they would practice. They would this artist had just notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of just lines. So they would just would make working on their brushstroke techniques. I took a lot away from that. So sometimes I'll just if I'll admit it's been a while. Really since the last, I'll say maybe a year since I've really sat down and done this. But just sit down and write some sentences. You know what I mean? Or just come up with an idea. Not I don't mean brainstorming. Brainstorming is its own thing. But I mean actually trying to shape sentences into paragraphs and paragraphs into a coherent thing. Sometimes it really behooves me to sometimes sit down and just say, well, let's just write some sentences today. I'll pick up a dictionary. I'll say, okay, this is a neat word, and I'll write a sentence. Or I'll find a sentence online that I think that's terrible, and then I'll try to rewrite it in 10 different ways, Or find a really good one, and then still try to rewrite it 10 different ways, So, but it's been a while. I haven't done that. Even saying that now, I'm like, wow, when's the last time you practiced? It's been more than a year. When X Crawl got hot and heavy, that was when that that last bit of that went out the window. So,
right. Yeah, I mean, that was your entire life for. Every time I talk to you, where are you on X Crawl? Oh, So,
yes.
Life bar, it's just that. Just 5 years of my life is just okay, I'm doing this.
So, yeah, but it's so good. It's you can totally tell. It's totally, it's magnifique. So, really, really is.
So that's why I just like the proofing process. It's a necessary step because we do catch stuff, But again, I think there was some stat like if once you reread your own stuff, you're only going to catch something like 25% of it, So that's why you have to have as many eyes as possible, on anything. But yeah, so we have, and now it goes to layout. It gets the final approval. And now, actually, we are done. Us Word Monkeys we is finished. We can dust our hands off and start in on the next thing, because from there it goes away to the printer, and depending on where things are in the printing chain, I've learned more about the printing process than I have than who prints where, what does what, and everything. But it was funny. It was when the whole pandemic hit. I was just I totally understood distributor change and fulfillment houses and everything, and that's another topic that we are not going to cover, however. But there's a whole big process between it going from the printer and ending up in your friendly local game store. But at this point, we'll say magic happens.
Yes. There are boxes and big guys. There are trucks and boats. So many things.
Custom guys, and if you're lucky, a warehouse Yeti.
If you're lucky, you get the best guy in the industry for that kind of thing. Keith, the Warehouse Yeti. Keith, who saved my game this weekend by last minute zipping me off a copy of the magnificent Queen of Elfman's Daughter, so I had a physical copy to highlight, before the game. Thank you again, Keith. You rule. Yeah, man. You know what? I think we should talk. That should be a topic for a time when we have a special guest.
I would love. We should definitely get Keith on the show. I have not seen
Let's
Keith.
Let's have Keith.
We get Keith on the show.
Hell yeah, I'm gonna call him.
Just hang out. We can just do an entire show, and Keith can talk about the Radium Springs. So just call him right now. We'll put him on the show right now. Yeti on the show.
Call Keith.
So yes, this is also how the process does. So we're sort of Brendan has to get out his phone and make a note to himself because the brain, she ain't what she used to be, right?
No, it's not. And I mean, I think a lot of my fellow word monkeys, I feel like I'm perpetually distracted. I always have something I'm kind of working on in the background there. So little things I should call this guy later, go away. And I have this bizarre, elaborate system of notes to myself, to-do lists, and things to keep the real world stuff going. You know, if I had nothing to do but like sit in a room and like write all day, like they would just bring me in paper and food and like take away empty plates and words, I'd be like, you know, I'd be so functional. It'd be amazing. I'd be like my best self, you know. What are you gonna do?
Eventually it shows up in our friendly local game store, or eventually we get our writers' copies.
Yep.
We get authors' copies. For those of you who think that, however, we're first on the list, I have still yet to see Rats of Ilkmar. So basically, our comp copies show up much later.
Yeah. I don't have a copy of what do you call it? A Curse on Heart yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I know folks do because people are running that for DCC Day. But I have it on PDF, but I don't have a physical copy yet.
I have my proof PDFs, but I don't actually have I haven't seen it yet.
Final.
Maybe the Yeti's holding them hostage on it.
You know, I was gonna mostly since I travel around with the booth guys, I'll say don't send me them. I'll just get them from the booth, and then I'll just the last day of the con I'll pick up a couple for myself and one for my mama. Remember that's the important part. Last day of the con, because if you're working the booth, you should be taking stuff the last day of the con, because when you do that, you lose the example to get all of the fleeting luck tokens, because I was playing by the rules and did not take my fleeting luck tokens. I know. So, you got beat up on that one, man. Sorry.
I digress. Oh, we should mention our job. One thing we missed over. Anybody who's ever picked up an adventure at the store and flipped it over and read the stunning prose on the back, that sizzle that helps sell the steak.
Yeah,
that's us.
Yeah,
we write that stuff. That's not marketing. That's us hard-working word monkeys. We put that together as if we were working for Madison Avenue.
Yeah, so. And I'm terrible at it. That's a really hard thing for me to do. Very often, like Joe, I'll be like, Joe, what do you think should go on there? And I'll just tweak it a little bit because it's not, But the back cover blurb is an art form all onto itself, and like really, to what's this adventure do? You turn it over, and you got 3 sentences to get somebody psyched about what you wrote. That's tricky. And there are people at it who are excellent at it, and I've gotten better. I'll say that. Yeah.
It's like anything. It's like you have if you're in the business, you have to get better at it. I just pretend like I'm a 1930s serial announcement. I found out in my own in personal writing, I use exclamation points these days far more than I used to, just because I'm used to da da da, thrill to the adventures of
I love that though. That's cool.
You get in that mindset. They actually the blurbs come pretty quickly. So.
I love it, man.
So that's it. So I think we've basically covered how the sausage is made.
Yeah. Any more questions from anybody on the?
Does anybody have any questions? Obviously we don't get things in real time.
No, but we'll stall for a minute while you're doing that, and I will reiterate. I'll say thanks again for tuning in. Yes. Here's the thing: we're over limit now, so like anything can happen. So, but thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, or if you want to send me cool pictures of your cool stuff that is unique and that I should know about, that's Brendan at Goodman-Games.com. Best case scenario, we put it online. Worst case scenario, Mike and I, dressed in black, come and steal it from your house. So either way, we win. So we would like to hear what you have.
From our good old friend Hector Cruz Missile. He wants to know what was a fun adventure to write.
Ooh. They're all like parts of them are all. You know what? If you want one of my all-time favorites is the Studio City Crawl, which is one of the X-Crawl adventures. It's very silly. It's just chock-a-block with personal references to all my friends in there and such and all that. And very early on, I realized that the DJ for that one, DJ Primetime, that he was Chevy Chase, and that like once I had that in my head, the whole thing wrote itself, and it's just this I don't know. I really enjoyed writing that one. Like that stands out to me as like one of those times where I was like, oh, this is really good. They're all fun. They're all fun to a different degree, but that one was hilarious to work on.
Right. They're like your children. You always like the one best.
How about you? What's an adventure that you particularly remember being a really good time to work on?
I love acting up in Nightmare.
Yeah.
I love it. I got so much of my old high school drama geek going on in that. I just being able to, because in the middle of the play, basically in the middle of the adventure, a couple of characters get thrown on stage and they have to do lines. So I got to write like an excerpt from this kind of like ribald, medieval play, and putting that together was hysterical. I love doing that. If I could just do that all the time, I would. But it was just, people who play tested it loved it. I think I think Mike Bolam has actually played it twice. Gary Con, I think Jen Brinkman played it for the first time, and like suddenly my phone chimes and it was just her saying like, the script is incredible. I'm like, all right, my work here is done. I'm happy, So
Awesome.
yeah, I loved writing that one. I always love doing something that is a little bit different from the just the standard adventure design stuff.
No, super cool.
I still love acting. So.
I love it.
All right. Well, I think so. Although Jess has offered to leave some cake and coffee for us on the counter, I think we should be approaching this end.
Yes.
And we should be venturing off for another week. Hopefully, we'll look into things over the course of the week and figure out what went wrong, so we don't happen to get. So. It's okay. It's all learning experience. Man. We went into this saying we are cable show level, sophistication. So if people expect more than that, they obviously don't know us. So.
Mike's World, party time, excellent.
Excellent. Yes, the basically talking about how the sausage made. The pitch for this show was Between Two Ferns meets Wayne's World. So there you go. So. You know what? I think if we had a good sponsor who had deep pockets, maybe they could afford to hire us a producer.
Why, I'm glad you brought it up because this week's sponsor is, of course, Moleskine Notebooks. How far away did I get to it? Moleskine Notebooks.
Notebooks. The notebooks of game designers and frustrated writers everywhere.
Yes. Right? We love them. You can get a reasonable 3-pack from Half Price Books. They're, slim enough that you can carry to a convention. I love working in them, and you do as well.
Right. For the Moleskine people who are listening, I have an idea for you. This one's free. All right, Moleskine, which are already Starbucks scented.
Great. That's so fantastic, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that will do us for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. Sorry about the problems at the very beginning, but hey, we're word monkeys, not tech monkeys.
I know.
All right, so signing off for another week, I'm Michael Curtis.
I'm Brendan LaSalle.
And until next week, keep crawling. All right, good night. We out of here.
Here we are.
The geeks come out at night. The geeks come out at night.